The Eagles pull out an ugly win against the Carolina Panthers this past Sunday. The Sixers, Ben Simmons is apparently back in Philadelphia and ready to be back on the Sixers roster. And the Flyer season starts this Friday. All that coming to you on Sports Talk Philadelphia. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sports Talk Philadelphia. I'm your host, Cale Flieger. I'm joined by my co-producer, Aiden Siksinski. Aiden, how you doing?
Doing pretty well.
We have Shane Nolan back for another episode. Shane.
Hello.
And we have Mike Holden back again for another week. Mike?
How you doing?
So we're going to jump right into it. The Eagles, they defeated the Carolina Panthers 21-18 in Carolina this past Sunday, and by no means it was pretty ugly to watch that game, but the Eagles, they still got the win, which is all that matters. Jalen Hurts looked pretty impressive. He had 22 of 37 passes, 198 passing yards. He did have interceptions, but 2 key rushing touchdowns in that second half to put the Eagles over the Panthers. And Devontae Smith, another impressive outing for the rookie wide receiver, 7 receptions and 77 yards. But the biggest part out of this game is the defense finally came up after allowing back-to-back weeks of 40-plus points to the Cowboys and the Chiefs. They bounced back and they finally won the turnover battle for the first time this season, which is one of Merrill Reese's key points before every game is win the turnover battle, and which they did. They had 3 interceptions in the game. Darius Slay had 2 interceptions. Steven Nelson with a clutch interception at the end of the game to seal the game for the Birds. And the Eagles defense also had 3 sacks, and one coming from defensive tackle Fletcher Cox, his first sack of the season. So, Aiden, I want to start with you. What are your thoughts from this past Sunday? I mean, it was pretty ugly on the offensive end the first half, not many design plays, but how do you think about it went?
Yeah, so the way that I think about this game, it's really, there's always a game, especially with a young team like this, that there's going to be an ugly win. And this is one that the Eagles probably shouldn't have won, but they were able to pull it off, and that makes it so much better. The fact that it is one of those wins that throughout the game, you're just wishing that you could be anywhere else. And then there's a couple of clutch plays. Steve Nelson, as you said, that's someone I've been really harping on this season, who's not been good, comes up with the clutch interception. Jalen Hurts, although he didn't play great, he did enough for them to win. And for a young quarterback like that, only in his second year, that's an intangible that you don't have with every quarterback. So I think that he showed off a skill set that we really want him to have. So I think overall, although it wasn't the best game he played, a win's a win. And that's all I can really say about that.
Yeah, a win is a win, and all Eagles fans have to be feeling good after that game on Sunday. Get back in the win column after 3 straight losses. Mike, I want to go to you next. How important and impressive was this defense this past Sunday? I mean, 3 turnovers, 3 sacks. I mean, this was really the first week where the Eagles defense just flat out dominated the Panthers offense.
Yeah, I mean, it's about time. It's been a couple weeks since the defense has actually stepped up. I mean, the Cowboys and the Chiefs totally destroyed this defense. So, that first game against the Falcons and the Niners is what we saw on Sunday against the Panthers. So, the players who we paid a lot of money finally stepped up. Darius Slay had 2 interceptions, finally living up to his name, big play Slay. Philadelphia media legend Ray Didinger on the pregame show before the game, his bold prediction was that Slay would get an interception, and he did. So, he finally stepped up. Hopefully he can continue that tonight. And, Hargrave still doing his thing. And then Fletcher Cox finally showed up on the stat sheet getting a sack. So, hopefully they can build on that against tonight against the Bucs. But, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, Darius Slay, just to jump back on him real quick, all of last season was his first season with the Eagles. He only had 1 interception that whole season. And against the Carolina Panthers this past Sunday, he had 2. So major improvements at the cornerback position for the Eagles. TJ Edwards, the special teams came up clutch on Sunday. I mean, in the fourth quarter, the Eagles were still down to the Carolina Panthers. The Panthers were punting to the Eagles, and TJ Edwards, the linebacker of the Eagles, had a beautiful block, was covered by linebacker Sean Bradley for the Eagles, and put the Eagles pretty much in the Panthers' red zone, which gave them a lot of momentum in the game, and it seemed like there's no way the Eagles were going to lose that game, Aiden.
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely the turning point of that game. And that, again, like I've been saying, that's what a young team does. You find a way to win. Even though it's not going to be the cleanest game, sometimes there's going to be something crazy like a punt block. Sometimes there'll be something else. But I really think that this is something that another intangible of this team is that they have not given up in a single game this year. even against the Chiefs, which is a team that they were completely should not have been even close to with this roster, they were consistently in that game. In the 49ers game, they were still in that game, even though they didn't play well. And in this game, they finally won. So I think that this is a team that, although they're going to be young, although they might not win a lot of games, they're going to stay close in a lot of games. And I think that's something that's really important for this building year.
Yeah, and to go back on the Eagles' first half, which was absolutely atrocious. I mean, they only had 6 points in the first half, and 3 of those points pretty much came from Darius Slay because he picked off Sam Darnold, and the Eagles were in the Carolina Panthers red zone, so they kicked the field goal there for 3 points. And their other 3 points came late in the second quarter where they had about a 1.5-minute drive with about 1 timeout, and Jake Elliott kicked a 50-yard field goal, which was pretty impressive and I thought swung a lot of momentum in the Eagles' favor in that first half going into halftime. Mike, I want to go to you. Are you starting to get worried with Nick Sirianni's play calling? I mean, there's multiple weeks now where it has been questionable. I mean, especially in that first half, that was not a good performance by play calling at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little troublesome, but at the same time, it is only his 5th game as an NFL coach, so I guess we got to be a little, lenient with him. But I'll be frank, it's been horrible. Terrible play calling, screens. I don't know how many screens they run, but it's so predictable at times, and then not running the ball. It's kind of reminded me of the final years of the Chip Kelly days when it was just brutal. But hopefully it's just kind of a learning curve for him, and we'll see what his game plan is tonight. But it really hasn't been promising, but we'll see what happens.
Obviously in the second half, the Eagles' offensive performance dramatically jumped from the first half, scoring 2 touchdowns. And Aiden, I'm going to go to you. What did Nick Sirianni do different in that second half to get the ball moving a little bit and to not have these 3 and outs and get the defense some rest? I mean, it seemed like the whole first half, the defense of the Eagles was on the field the entire time. That cannot happen. I mean, you're just going to tire your players out by the end of the game.
Yeah, I think it really wasn't the play calling as much as it was the Eagles forcing turnovers deep in Carolina's territory and the Eagles being able to execute off of those turnovers. I think that being really hard, Nick Sirianni was very hard on Jonathan Gannon this last week, telling him the defense needs to be better. The defense really did step up, as we've been talking about so far on the show, and I think that made a huge difference to the offense. Obviously, when you only have to go 20, 30 yards on each drive, and you're executing scoring touchdowns, that's really going to help you win games.
Yeah, and another player that came up absolutely huge on this past Sunday was Jayvon Hargrave, the defensive tackle for the Philadelphia Eagles. He's now in his 2nd season with the Eagles. Had kind of a disappointing first year with the Eagles, but has tremendously bounced back in this 2nd year with the Eagles. He has 6 sacks, which ranks 1st in the NFL among defensive players. 7 tackles for loss, ranked 1st in the NFL. 17 run stops, 1st in the NFL as well. And a 23% pass rush win rate, which is also ranked 1st in the NFL. And it's insane how much those statistics actually mean on the defense. I mean, Jayvon Hargrave has been the disruptor that the Eagles' defensive line has needed, especially with Fletcher Cox not performing as well as he should be through the first 5 weeks of the season. I mean, Jayvon Hargrave has been the sole player on that Eagles defense who has shown up for the first 5 weeks in the season. And Mike, I want to go to you. How important has it been for Jayvon Hargrave to have this type of season his 2nd year with the Eagles?
Yeah, I mean, it's very important. I mean, we're seeing that, now he really has been the heart of the defense. And, I think when we signed him, it was kind of more to get, we knew he was a good player, but it was more for depth. And, but now he's kind of taken over as that, number 1 guy on that D-line, especially now with Graham hurt. But, I think I think everybody could see Cox is kind of, getting past his prime now. And Hargrave stepping up, and hopefully he can continue doing it. But I'm loving what I'm seeing from him, and he's been a great pickup. And hopefully he can just keep it up throughout the rest of the season.
Yeah, if Jayvon Hargrave continues to play like this, I mean, I cannot see any possibility that he's not in the Defensive Player of the Year discussion, Aiden.
Oh yeah, absolutely not. I mean, when you are 1st in tackles for loss, sacks, and rush stops, you cannot be in consideration for Defensive Player of the Year. Obviously, he has to keep it up, but as we talked about, he is the one guy, as you said, Caleb, he's the one guy that's consistently showed up. I mean, that Cowboys game, everyone said that he was the player of that game because he was the only one that actually looked like he wanted to be on the field. And when you have a leader like that, especially when Fletcher Cox, you can tell he's getting older, a bit slower, it's really nice to have someone on the defensive line that you can trust like that. And I think that's who the Eagles have right now in Hargrave.
Yeah, Mike, I want to go to you. Do you have a player of the game for the Eagles against the Carolina Panthers?
It's got to be Darius Slay. the 2 interceptions. He's been getting criticized, by the media, sports media, Philly sports media, all season. And, he finally stepped up. Just like you said earlier, the interception gave them really the only points of that first half for them. And, that other one in the second half. So, it's Darius Slay for me, and hopefully this is a game that he can build off and, continue it for the rest of the season.
Aiden, do you have a player of the week from this game with the Panthers?
I do. I'm going to go with someone else, someone that hasn't really been talked about in the Eagles, but is really having a bounce-back year. I'm going to go with Jake Elliott. 2 really clutch field goals, including that 58-yarder at the end of the half. He's now 7 of 8 on field goals of the year after a really just not good year last year. He only made 14 of 19 field goals. So already he has stepped up to me and proven that he's someone that the Eagles can trust in clutch situations. Obviously hasn't kicked any game winners yet, but I'm way more confident in letting him do that than I would have been at any point last year.
Yeah, Jake Elliott's first half field goal that sent the Eagles into overtime was 58 yards, which is the 3rd longest NFL kick for the Eagles in their franchise history. And he also holds the first longest kick in Eagles franchise history at 61 yards, that game winner against the Giants a few years ago. Next, we're going to go into the standings real quick. The Cowboys are 4-1 at first place in the NFC East. Eagles and Washington are now tied at 2-3 for second place. And the Giants are 1-4 in third place after their quarterback Daniel Jones got hurt this past week. Aiden, after this win on Sunday, do you think the Eagles are back in contention for the NFC East, or do you think the Cowboys still hold the reins?
Yeah, I don't. I really think that this is the year that everyone can say that the Cowboys are Super Bowl contenders. I know that it's been talked about in the past, and they don't really hold up to that expectation. This year, I think they can. But the NFC wildcard is wide open. There's how many teams are here? Around 9 teams are a game either tied for that wild card or a game out of that wild card. So I think the Eagles, if they can keep winning close games like this, should be able to make the wild card.
The Eagles, they also face the Tampa Bay Buccaneers tonight for the sixth game of the NFL season. The Buccaneers are 4-1 on the season. They have a lot of threats on the offensive end. They obviously have the best quarterback of all time, Tom Brady, who has not lost a step, has 15 touchdowns and 1,700 passing this season. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers also have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Antonio Brown. But they also have key players out tonight in Rob Gronkowski, linebacker Levante David, and starting safety Antoine Winfield. The Eagles have Lane Johnson out again for this game, and also Dallas Goedert, who got put into COVID-19 protocol and won't be cleared for today's game. Aiden, what do you see in tonight's game with the Eagles? I mean, do you think they have a chance against Tom Brady, or do you think it's going to be a little bit of a blowout?
I think it's going to be a lot like this Chiefs game. It's a game that they probably should get blown out in, but they're going to stay in it anyway. I think that the Buccaneers are just a little bit better than them, and for that reason, I think the Bucs do end up winning this game, but I think it will be close.
Mike, do you have a score prediction for this game tonight?
Yeah, I think they'll lose, but I think they'll keep it a close game. My prediction, I think it'll be like a 20-17 type of game. Hopefully, it's not a heartbreaker like that. Hopefully they can win, but I think it's going to be, a close fought, hard-fought game for the Eagles, but they're going to lose a close one.
How about you, Aiden? Score prediction?
I'm going to go 24-17.
Eagles or Buccaneers?
Buccaneers, yeah,
All right.
Unfortunately.
Well, I'm going to go 35-31 Philadelphia Eagles. I think the Eagles they've won their past 6 in a row Thursday night football games, so I think that streak is going to continue tonight, and they're going to be back in the NFC East race. Next, we're going to move to Sixers talk. Big news with Ben Simmons. He is back in Philadelphia, took his COVID-19 test to make sure he can rejoin the team and start practicing with his teammates again. I think this comes to shock for a lot of people. I mean, personally, I thought Ben Simmons was just going to sit out until he got traded and take those fines, but it seems like Ben doesn't like losing millions of dollars not showing up for his team. So, Aiden, I want to go to you. What is your reaction to this Ben Simmons news? Do you like it? Mixed emotions? I mean, obviously the Sixers are a better team with Ben Simmons, but the drama that he has created this offseason is, I don't know if I want him on the Sixers team.
Yeah, so I'm going to critique one thing you said. I think they're a better defensive team without him on the court. I don't agree with that offensively. I think in the playoffs he's shown he's not an elite offensive player, and even in the regular season too. I'm really not happy he's back. I understand why he's coming back. Obviously, when you lose over $1 million before the regular season even starts, that's a pretty good incentive to come back. But it seems like the players don't want him back. It seems like Doc Rivers has said a lot of stuff that he also doesn't want Ben Simmons back. So obviously, there could be issues with a contentious locker room, and that doesn't really make for a championship team.
Yeah, I saw in a lot of media press conferences with Danny Green and Seth Curry of the Philadelphia 76ers, they don't seem too happy that Ben's back. I mean, a question was asked to Danny Green is, Do you expect Ben Simmons to apologize to the teammates for the way he acted this offseason? He says if he does, he does. If he doesn't, he doesn't. He said, I just want him to be here so we can get this team better and get ready for the regular season. Mike, I want to go to you. How do you think the Sixers players feel now that Ben Simmons is back in that locker room? Do you think they have all the trust in him in the world, or do you think it's going to be just more drama this upcoming season?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you can trust, him after everything that's gone on. If I was on that team, I wouldn't have, any trust with him. So, hopefully, the chemistry and all this stuff, I hope that we don't have to worry about that and he gets traded before the season, but at this point, that's not looking likely. So if he does play, hopefully he's, he doesn't, pull anything and throw any games or, fake an injury. But we'll see what happens. But, I think it definitely affects, and it's probably a little awkward in that locker room when he comes back. So we'll see what happens with that. But I think it definitely, changes that chemistry a little bit.
Now, Aiden, do you still think that there's a Ben Simmons trade in the near future? Maybe the Sixers wait a couple games in the season for him to play real well. His trade value goes up. I mean, maybe a team has a key injury on the offensive end or on their team, and they want to replace that spot, and they give up a little more than Ben Simmons is actually worth. Do you think that's a highly scenario to happen for the Sixers this season, or do you think he'll stick it out with them?
Yeah, I think it definitely is. I think we are looking at, we've been talking about it, is this going to turn into another James Harden situation? I think it will at this point, especially now he's back on the team. I think the Sixers are still going to look around. Obviously, Ben's, he's not worth as much as he was at the end of last year, trade-wise. However, I do think that there will be a team that wants him. I'm really interested in the Nets, what's happening with them. Obviously, Kyrie Irving doesn't look like that he's going to be playing due to the fact he's not vaccinated. Sixers could potentially trade him there if they need a point guard. Only issue is Ben vaccinated? Because I've been reading stuff that he might not be due to the protocols that he's following. He's not following vaccinated player protocols. He's following unvaccinated player protocols, which could be a huge issue if we're trying to trade him to a team that might want him, as in the Warriors, Nets, teams that have very strict COVID protocols.
That is very true. And obviously the Sixers last season with Ben Simmons on their team, they were the first seed in the Eastern Conference for the first time in a while. I mean, that was a very impressive season, especially as Doc Rivers' first season as the Sixers head coach. Mike, I want to go to you. Since Ben Simmons is back on this roster, do you think that they have a chance to contend for the first seed in the Eastern Conference, or do you think that they're going to dip towards the 3-5 mark this year?
No, I think they can. I think they'll be contenders again, just like last year. They got the 1 seed last year. I mean, we've seen it with Ben. The regular season, you can kind of deal with his, not shooting and offensive, problems that he has. We've seen that in the regular season. I mean, they got the 1 seed last year. But, when it comes to the playoffs, they can be the 1, 2, 3 seed. His flaws are going to come out just like they did against the Hawks, where we all know what happened then. So, there'll still be contenders, but when it comes to the playoffs, if he's still on this team, unless he in the regular season is shooting, 15-foot jump shots, it's going to be the same stuff. And, there'll be contenders in the regular season, but when it comes to playoffs, it's going to be the same thing. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, another thing I want to jump to is we all see these videos every summer of Ben Simmons in a gym making a bunch of threes in a row. I mean, Aiden, I want to go to you. Do you think this season it will finally happen that Ben Simmons will attempt threes? I mean, do you think he'll gain back Philly's love if he just goes out there the first night and attempts 5 threes, even if he makes 0 of them?
He absolutely would. I don't think he's going to do that. I think that Ben Simmons is one of those players who thinks he's great no matter what. Throughout his time in high school in Australia, through his time in LSU, he was always considered the best player. Shows up to the NBA, that's the mentality he has. He already assumes that he is the best player on the court no matter what. And that's something that has really held him back. It's something that other NBA players have said would hold him back, and it unfortunately has. So I really think that Ben Simmons does not want to get better because he already thinks that he's that good.
Yeah, the Sixers home opener will definitely be an interesting one when they announce Ben Simmons in the starting lineup. Mike, how do you think the reaction of the fans is going to be when they announce Ben Simmons in that starting lineup? I
mean, I'll be there, and I know I'll be booing for sure. So I think probably me and probably 20 other thousand Sixers fans, it's not going to be. I mean, he knows that he's not going to get a good reception. I mean, how are you going to get a good reception? And like you said, if he goes out there and shoots 5 threes, I still might boo because, I think it's too late. I think they need to get rid of him. But if he is in a Sixers uniform in that home opener, he's going to get booed pretty bad. So we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, now with Ben Simmons back on the Sixers, probably sliding back into that starting point guard role, Aiden, who do you think is going to be the Sixers' sixth man of the year to start the year? My guess is going to be Tyrese Maxey. What do you think?
That's what I think it is too. Shake Milton has really been in that role a lot as well, or at least has tried to be. Unfortunately, as we've again talked about on this show, he either has really on or off games. So I do see Tyrese Maxey really stepping into that sixth role this year.
Yeah, the Philadelphia 76ers season is definitely going to be an interesting one. We'll definitely provide you guys more with Ben Simmons updates because I'm sure there's going to be more stories to come throughout this season with him. Next, we're going to move to Flyers talk as the Flyers open up their regular season tomorrow on Friday against the Vancouver Canucks. The Flyers in the preseason, they looked all right. Newly acquisition Cam Atkinson had a very good preseason with the Flyers, and so did veteran captain Claude Giroux, also had a pretty good preseason. Shane, I want to bring you into this. What is your expectations for the Flyer tomorrow night, and do you think they're going to pull out a win against the Canucks?
I do think they're going to pull out a win. It's their home opener. I mean, it's the first time in a couple of months where they're allowed to have a full capacity crowd. So, I mean, the whole crowd's going to be crazy and everything. But yeah, I think they're going to pull off the win because the Vancouver Canucks, I mean, they're a really young team, especially back on the defense. Their youngest defenseman is Quinn Hughes. He's a good defenseman, but they have a pretty young team. So,
Aiden, what are your thoughts for this game tomorrow night? Do you think the Flyers are going to pull out a win, or do you think they're going to leave some Flyers fans scratching their head at the end of this game?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's going to be really hard to tell. Obviously, due to the COVID last year, the conferences were realigned. So the Flyers really haven't played the Canucks in over a year and a half. And also, you have to remember the Canucks were out, had a lot of players out due to COVID. At least like half their team was quarantined at one point this season. So I think it is going to be really hard to tell at this point. I think you really have to get on the ice and figure out which team is going to be good. But I do have confidence in the Flyers being able to pull out a win in this game.
Shane, is there any players to watch for this game tomorrow night?
for me, it's going to be Joel Farabee and Carter Hart. I mean, last year, Joel Farabee was the leading goal scorer with, I think he had like 20 goals last year. And then obviously Carter Hart, last year he had 27 games played, started in 25 of them. He had 9 wins, 11 losses, and a 3.67 goals against average, which isn't the best in hockey. But for me, the biggest is probably going to be Carter Hart to have a bounce back year this year.
Yeah, Carter Hart definitely was disappointing last year in the NHL season, but Flyers fans are still optimistic with him because we know how much potential and how young he is at that goalie position and how important it is. Mike, I want to go to you real quick. What are your predictions for tomorrow night? Do you have a Flyers win, loss?
Yeah, I think they'll win tomorrow. I think they'll start the season off, strong. They really need a bounce back year. I think especially for Giroux, to keep that C, he needs to carry this team like he has, for the last however many years. He's struggled, but he needs to prove why he's got that C on his chest. So I think they'll win tomorrow, and I think they'll start a good year.
Yeah, and hopefully the Flyers start on a good foot this season and get a win tomorrow night to start their season in the win column. Next, we're going to move into Fast Five, and since Tyler isn't here, we're going to have This Week in Baseball with Aiden Siksinski.
Yeah, so the biggest storyline I think of this postseason has to be Randy Arozarena. Last year had an historic postseason, 10 home runs in one postseason, most in baseball history. This year did another historic feat. He became the first player in MLB history to hit a home run and steal home plate in one game, and also became the first player to steal home in a postseason game since Jackie Robinson did it in 1995. This postseason, again, he only played 4 games, but even those 4 games, he hit .333, 1 home run, 3 RBIs, a 174 OPS, and a 474 on base percentage. So I think that even though he was a rookie this year, he is someone that you need to watch in every postseason game that he plays in.
Next question we're going to go to, Mike, I'm going to go to you for this one. Who is your best NFL team through the first 5 weeks of the NFL season?
Yeah, I think for me now it's the Buffalo Bills. A huge win on Sunday Night Football last week against the Chiefs, 38-20. Their last 4 games, they've just blown out teams. They lost the season opener against the Steelers by 7 points. But since then, they haven't played great teams. But last week, obviously the Chiefs, they proved that the Bills are still the cream of the crop of the AFC. So right now it's the Bills, and they overtake the Cardinals for me this week.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. The Bills went into Arrowhead Stadium against the Chiefs it looked like revenge from that AFC Championship game in 2021 where the Bills lost and the Chiefs advanced to the Super Bowl. So I definitely have the Buffalo Bills. I mean, you got players like Emmanuel Sanders, a veteran wide receiver who's made huge plays for them the past couple of weeks. So definitely the Buffalo Bills. Next, I want to move to Shane. I want to go to you for this one. After the first round of the MLB playoffs, who is your title favorite?
I still think it's going to be the Dodgers. I still think they're going to go back-to-back world champions. I mean, I just like their pitching staff and Walker Buehler, Max Scherzer, and Julio Urias, and their offense, Corey Seager, Mookie Betts, and it looks like Cody Bellinger is starting to pick it up. So for me, it's going to be the Dodgers.
Yeah, next question. Aiden, I'm going to go to you for this one. The AFC West is a stacked division right now. You got multiple 3-1 teams. You got the Chargers, you got the Raiders, the Chiefs in that division. The Chiefs are currently 2-3. Obviously, back-to-back Super Bowl appearances. Do you think the Kansas City Chiefs make the playoffs this year, or do you think they might bounce out this year?
No, I think they will. I think that the AFC wild card is just too wide open for them not to make it, and it's very power bounce at the top of it. Obviously, you've got the Bills in first place in their division. You don't really have a great team in the AFC North, although I do think that the Browns are getting up there to be elite. And then you have the Chargers in first. And besides that, there's really no other teams that I could say those teams will definitely make the wild card. And the Chiefs obviously have made the playoffs the last 5 years or so in a row. So I don't see any reason why they shouldn't at this point.
Totally agree with that. I think somehow when you have an MVP quarterback in Patrick Mahomes and the offensive threats that they do have, even if their defense is bottom half of the league, they're still going to find a way to make the playoffs this year. Last question we're going to go to, kind of discuss this one a little bit, is the John Gruden news that came out in the NFL. John Gruden did resign as the Raiders head coach of this past week because of discovered emails that came out of not too good things that he was saying. Just sad reaction because John Gruden has been a staple in the NFL community for a while now. I mean, he's always helped players out. I mean, he's been one of those guys that people look up to, and to hear this type of news is very disheartening, and it's something that the NFL is trying to crack down on and not allow in the NFL anymore. But just a sad scenario. And like Derek Carr said, he says, I love the man, but I hate the sin. So hopefully people help him out during this hard time. That's all we have for Fast 5, and that's all we have for Sports Talk Philadelphia today. I want to thank you guys for watching this episode. And don't forget to follow us on our social media on Twitter and Instagram at Sports Talk LTV. And again, thank you guys for coming and watching. And we'll be back next Thursday to provide more updates for you guys. Thanks for coming.